Hey authors, it's Megan Barnhart. I'm coming at you live from Author Like a Boss, the Facebook group and the Facebook page. I'm going to go ahead and get us shared up in the group. If you're watching from somewhere besides the Author Like a Boss Facebook group, make sure you come on over and join us here. We have a lot of fun and it's so hard to talk and type at the same time. Am I the only one with this problem? Like typing one thing, saying another. Okay. Author like a boss. Awesome. Okay. Yay. So now you have my complete undivided attention. If you don't know me, I am Megan. I'm the co-founder of Author Like a Boss with the lovely and talented Ella Barnard. And even if you do know me, that's still who I am. So all this month, Ella and I are doing lives. And you might be thinking, but you guys do lives every month and every week because you're awesome. And you would be right. Thanks for calling us awesome, by the way. But what's special about this month is that we're doing lives focused on great tips for launching your book. And that's because we're gearing up to run another session of Book Launch Like a Boss Bootcamp starting on May 31st. Booyah! Woohoo! You're going to have a chance to learn more about Bootcamp at the end of this video, so stay tuned. But for now, tell me, are you ready to make some money selling your books? Who out there is ready to make money selling books? Is that you? You're like, ooh, that would be so nice to be getting emails saying you have money in your author account. You have a royalty payment coming in. While you were doing something else, your book was making money for you. How awesome would that feel? Pretty good, yeah? Hey, Melissa. But there can be some fear to that too, right? So on the one hand, you're like, of course, Megan, of course I'm ready to make money with my books. But maybe back there somewhere, there's a little voice in your head saying, but what if readers don't love my book? Hey, April, right? Do you guys get that little fear? Like, what if they don't love my book? I don't know. What if I put it out there and I see that people aren't even reading? Like they read the first 2 pages and then they just stop, or they don't leave reviews and they don't like it. Hey, Rachel. Yes, definitely. Especially, it would be nice. Oh, it would be nice to get royalties, especially if you could make money from your books and write full time. Yes, right? I know. I love it. But there's that little fear of what if readers don't love what we write. Now, I totally feel you guys on this. Actually, I have a confession to make. I have published books without launching them before. I mean, I kind of just slid them onto Amazon and didn't tell anybody that I had a book available because of the fear that people might not love the book. So if you have that fear, I'm going to put it out there and maybe readers won't love it, I completely feel you on that. Absolutely 100%. So it's okay. But today I'm going to give you some tips for how to make it so you don't have to guess or hope or keep your fingers crossed about readers loving your books. You can put some things in place that will be guaranteed to be fantastic elements that readers love, that are tried and true things that readers love. Melissa, I hear you on that. Melissa's saying, I think that's what makes me procrastinate so much. That is where I am too. It's that fear of the closer I get to the end, the scarier it is. And what if they don't love it, right? And that's when we pull back. It's a very, very common thing. So let's take some of the guesswork out of it, you guys. Let's give you some reliable strategies you can use to get readers raving about your book, to make them really, really love it. Okay, so all of this month, my part of the book launching theme is going to be focused on how to create a story that readers love, and also how to do that without rewriting your entire draft. We want this information to be helpful even if you've finished a draft. We don't want you to have to go back and rewrite and restructure, which by the way is also often a form of procrastination, right? I'll just redo everything. You don't have to do that. I'm going to give you some tips you can use even after you've drafted to go back and tweak instead of entirely rewrite. Hey Lloyd, good to see you. All right, does that sound good to you guys to have some tips you can use to go back and tweak instead of completely rewrite? Yeah, all right. Sounds good to me. I'm yeah, go for it, Megan. I want to hear. All right. If you want to hear, let me know with a comment or send me an emoji. Would it be helpful if you had some like checklists and reliable things you could do to make your readers love your book? All right. So today is going to be entirely focused on the first chapter of your book. Obviously, there's more coming later in the month. There's more you can do to make readers love your book, but everything we're going to talk about today is focused on that first chapter, because your first chapter deserves a lot of love. And there are some obvious reasons for this, right? Like when we go to read a book, we start reading at the first chapter, right? So if I'm deciding whether or not to continue, I'm deciding after I read that first chapter. Of course, if you have your book up on Amazon, then people are getting a chance to read some of your first chapter before they even decide to purchase your book, right? So that's another really important reason why your first chapter has got to be primo. But there's a kind of less obvious and still really important reason why your first chapter has to be great. As readers, we start making decisions about what a book is going to be like and how much we will enjoy it in the first chapter. And so that first chapter sets a level of expectation. And there might be some readers who do continue reading, but from that first chapter have decided this book is just not going to be their favorite, right? Like, yeah, I'm going to keep reading, but this is just going to be one of those that I won't even leave a review for because it's just not going to be that good. Right? That's a terrible feeling. You want readers to love your book. So even though they're going to continue reading, you want to make sure they're reading with an expectation that this is going to be something they'll really enjoy and want to recommend to all of their friends. Oh, we have kitty sighting. Fernberry wants to give you some tips too. His tip is make sure you bite everybody. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit. What will that look like to, I've totally lost my train of thought. Oh, those were the reasons your first chapter is important. Okay, so there are kind of two parts to this first chapter, and I'm only going to focus on one part today, and that is helping people connect with your character. Next week, we're going to talk about another key component, something you need in your first chapter. But let's really just get specific so I'm not overwhelming you with too many ideas that you can't implement. So we're going to zoom in and we're going to talk about your main character and what kinds of things should be happening with your main character in your first chapter to make readers love your book. So if you just joined us, now you're all caught up. Hey, Marina. Hey, Ella. Ooh, we have Ella on board today. All right. Very first point about your main character in your first chapter, make sure we can tell who your main character is. Now, that might sound silly, like you might go, well, obviously, but it definitely happens that sometimes as authors, we get really excited about introducing other characters, or we get really excited about introducing the world or the setting. And there's so much going on, and it comes from this place of love. We're trying to give our readers a bunch. We're like, here, and this, and this, and this, and this. But it's like if somebody comes over to your house and before you even let her like hang up her coat, you're like, do you want some water? Do you want a glass of wine? Do you want to see my new deck furniture? Say hello to my cat. And they're like, I can't. Too much. Okay. So first thing, make sure we can tell who your main character is. Your main character should stand out because we feel like we're following her, right? We should be seeing the world through her point of view. And that doesn't necessarily have to be literal. It doesn't mean she's narrating. It just means that the things you're showing us are important to your main character in her life. So don't give us a long description of the birds eating bread in the park if your main character isn't the one watching those birds or isn't interested in them for some reason. Once we know who your main character is and we're really clear on this is the person whose journey we're going to be following, think about the following do's and don'ts to start getting readers to connect with your character. That's really the goal of this chapter. Okay, I know who my main character is, and now I connect with her. I bond with her. It's all about bonding with your main character in this very first chapter and making us feel like we couldn't possibly leave after reading that sample on Amazon or after reading that first chapter on our Kindles or wherever without knowing what happens to this character. So here are some ways you can help us bond with your main character. Here are some main character bonding do's. The first one that's so important is having your main character be vulnerable. She should have weaknesses. She should have flaws. I'm sure you know this from life as well as from reading books. We start caring for people when they're vulnerable, right? This is one of like Ella's big secrets about marketing. It's a big marketing strategy. When you show vulnerability, other people feel safe to be a little bit vulnerable themselves. And you need your readers to be a little bit vulnerable. You need them to open their hearts to your character, right? So when your main character is vulnerable, we're like, oh, I feel you. I know what that's like. Okay. Best possible thing you can do, make your main character vulnerable. Another do, your main character should be wanting something. Now, depending on the structure of your plot, this might be the big thing that she wants that has her, arc that like starts off her arc for the whole novel, or it might be something smaller. That's okay. But like a secret wish or a crush or a need or desire, or to want to get away from someone or something else, all of those again will help us bond with your character. Your main character should be thinking and processing stuff, wondering, questioning, feeling unsure of things, because those are all ways that we again bond. We're like, ooh, that I wonder if you'll get what you want, and I understand what you're going through, and yeah, I've had those thoughts and doubts too, and all of that is going on. So that will look different depending on your narrative style. It might be that we're hearing things, hearing your main character's inner dialogue or dialogue, and it might just be the way you're describing things. And the final do is make your main character relatable. From headaches to bad bosses to nervous jitters before a wedding, what can you show us? What can you show your main character experiencing that makes us go, oh, I know what that's like. Oh yeah. Oh, me too. Oh yeah. All right. Those are your do's. You ready for the don'ts? You ready for the don'ts? Okay. Don't show us your main character being perfect. We have no point of connection. We don't know how to relate to somebody who's perfect. And for most of us, it's annoying, right? Don't show your main character being totally content and not wishing for anything, because then we're like, well, where's the story in that? So if your main character starts out on a tropical beach with a cute cabana boy bringing her bottomless Mai Tais, she needs to get a phone call from her lawyer telling her that her rotten ex-husband just ran off with all her money, right? There has to be some kind of conflict. Again, even if it's not the main conflict of your story, but otherwise we're like, well, what? I don't need to know any. I'm not trying to find out anything. I'm not trying to solve a mystery. And we'll tune out. Another don't let your main character be a closed book with no way for readers to know her thoughts and feelings. And the final don't have so many secrets for your main character that we don't have any clue who she is, what she wants, or who she really is. I've had the experience before reading, I guess the one that comes to mind is it was like kind of an action, mystery, spy drama. And I was 12 chapters in and I still didn't know who the main character really was and what he was trying to do and whether he really was, like somebody was pursuing him and I still didn't know, like, was it mistaken identity or was he really the person they thought they were? 12 chapters in. By the first chapter, we should know more about, who your character really is. It doesn't mean you have to reveal every secret, but think of it this way. In order for something to come across as like a mystery we want to solve, we have to feel like there's a possibility of solving it. Does that make sense? If somebody gives us a riddle that's just too dang hard, we're, nope, I don't even care to try to solve it. We have to feel like there's something, some clue to solving it. Okay, you guys, give me a check-in so far. I gave you some do's and don'ts. I talked about needing to know who your main character is right off the bat. Is this making sense? Throw me an emoji or leave a comment. Can you start to see how these do's and don'ts would really help soup up your first chapter, make it something that readers would love? Awesome. Okay. Ooh, I'm seeing the flower emoji. I love that one. Because it's not, I don't know. I was going to say it's not an emoji because it's not an emotion, but way too much thought my brain is putting into that. Now let's get down to brass tacks. Because what if you already have a draft? And I was promising that these are tips you can use to tweak, not to rewrite. Okay, so what do you do if you have your first draft already? The first thing is to go back through your draft and hunt for treasure. What treasure do you already have? First, look for vulnerabilities. Does your main character have a flaw? Maybe she's getting made fun of. Maybe she makes a big mistake. Does she get hurt? What's already there in your first chapter related to a vulnerability? Okay. Second thing to look for is, do you already have a big desire revealed in that first chapter? Something your main character wants but can't figure out how to get, whether it's the promotion at work, the cute cabana boy, or slaying the evil dragon who's holding dominion over the land, right? Okay, so go back and look for that treasure. Did you find one of those? If so, that's awesome. What you just need to do is turn up the volume on it a bit, okay? So give us more ways to relate to your main character about that vulnerability or that desire. So ask yourself these questions. And you can free write on them or brainstorm, or just ask them, and maybe something will come to you to add into your first chapter. So how does she feel? What's at stake for her in this situation? What other pressures is she dealing with? What's she afraid of? Why is she possibly a bit scared about getting the thing that she really wants? And what beliefs does she have about herself that make it hard for her to stop doing what she's doing and do what she really wants? So yes, basically, I just told you, become a life coach to your main character, right? But those questions really unlock how you could shine a light and make whatever's already there more interesting, whether it's a vulnerability or a desire. Okay, so that was scenario one, where you're like, oh, I already have something and I can turn up the volume. But Megan, what about scenario two, where I realize I don't have either of those things? All right, you are going to need to add some things back in, but you don't have to do huge add-ins. You don't have to add something in that's going to make these ripple effect changes later on, right? In fact, you don't want to do that. So imagine I'm writing a romance and then I decide, oh, instead of going on that singles cruise, I'm going to make my main character go study Buddhism in Tibet. I'm like, oh, now I have to rewrite my whole story. That was a bad idea that I had. Maybe I was procrastinating because I was worried about publishing my book. To go back to an earlier thread. Okay, so instead, you want to look for treasure in other chapters of your novel. You want to go to another place where something happens. Maybe you talk about a flaw later on, or you read about your character and you start noticing oh gosh, wow, she's really got this flaw or this weakness or whatever it is. So you pick something that already is true about your character and you find a way to just bloop, plop it into your first chapter. Now, what's really cool about this is you're not changing the big arc. You're not changing your plot structure. But what you are doing is building this wealth. It's like depositing money early on, and now it's going to get a chance to grow interest, so that by the time readers get to the climactic moments of your story, they're going to have a much richer experience because you're going to have planted these things. So let me make that a little bit more concrete. What if you get to chapter 17 of your book and your main character has to fight a werewolf, but she can't do it because her silver bullets are in the glove box of her car, which her irresponsible teenage son has once again taken without asking? What if you went back to your first chapter and put in the teenage son taking the car without asking, and her not reprimanding him? By the time people got to chapter 17, they'd be like, oh my gosh, you have such amazing foresight. You planted that seed and then it came to fruition. They'll never know you did it backwards. So you'll seem like a plot ninja. You'll seem like a super genius, but really you're building it backwards. You're going to a place in your story where something already happens based on that flaw or weakness. I'm imagining the flaw here is that she doesn't stand up for herself or set boundaries. No, you can't have the car. I'm going out to hunt werewolves. And you'll plant that seed early on. Ooh. Do you feel like you guys could use that? Give me an emoji. Can you see how you can plant that seed, create that bond, and also reinforce cool stuff that happens later in your plot? Feel like you could use that? Ooh, yeah. And if you haven't drafted your whole story, that's fine. Look at your outline and look at the kinds of scenes your main character is going to get embroiled in later. And you can come up with a flaw that you'll use in one of those scenes and then put it back at the beginning. All right. So that's just a little taste of how it's possible to make sure readers love your story by loving your first chapter, by loving your character, without having to rewrite your entire book. But I want to let you know that this is just barely scraping the surface. So Ella and I go way deep into this in the Book Launch Like a Boss bootcamp, and we actually help you do it. So we call this first chaptering like a boss because we like to verbify things. And in bootcamp, what happens is you get step-by-step worksheets to go through your first chapter, find the money in the bank that's already there, and then I actually help you take things to the next level. You get on a live call with me and I give you personalized feedback to make your first chapter really sing. And that's just one module, you guys, out of 8. That's one module out of 8 modules in the Book Launch Like a Boss bootcamp. So if you want to learn more about bootcamp and be the very first to know when enrollment opens, get on the VIP list by going to authorlikeaboss.com/bootcamp. And tune in next week as we keep this party going. Ella is going to be talking about building your launch team. And I'm going to be talking about the other key feature you need in your first chapter if you want readers to love your story. Make sure you don't miss those lives. You can sign up to get notified when we go live by going to authorlikeaboss.com/notify. All right. I saw there were a few little comments and questions. So just real quick, I'm going to see if I can grab some questions. I'm just trying to figure out how to portray a main character whose background is unknown and his past comes to play little by little. Wayne, great question. One of the main things you can do is to help us know we're not supposed to know everything. To keep planting little seeds and little hints that make us feel okay that we don't know everything, but that still keep us interested. Right? So have your character do things that we don't immediately understand, but that intrigue us and make us want to follow, and so we can get the answers. Okay. Yes, backwards building. Backwards building. Okay. Were there some other questions about characters? Nope, not a question, but I like this comment. What's the point of a character who seems perfect to everyone lesser than him? Yeah, none of us want to read about somebody who's completely perfect. There's no way to connect, right? There's no way to connect. Okay, so thanks so much for watching, you guys. Please make sure to like, share, tag a friend you think would enjoy this. And if you love the videos that Ella and I do, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Author Like a Boss. You'll find all of our videos there, and they're organized by playlists. You can jump in to a topic you're working on in your writing or your marketing and get all of the help you need. All right, thanks so much for watching. Happy authoring. Goodbye.